It was actually reading your book, and I went to the part where it was talking about Donald Trump, because Donald Trump gets mentioned in quite a few sections of your book, and I couldn't quite. I know you're probably not supportive of any of them, but is he as nuts as he makes out to be, or is he actually playing a really clever game?
Well, the thing is, if you are on public display with a title like president or prime minister, you are light years away from the point of real power. These people come and these people go, but as I say to people, it's not the here today, gone tomorrow politicians that you have to look at, it's who's always there. And if you look at the American example, and you'll find something similar everywhere, the Republican Party is controlled by a network known as the neocons or neoconservatives. These were the people behind George Bush and the invasions of Middle Eastern countries, not least Iraq. And in the Democratic Party, if only it was, you have a group of similar people that I call the democons. And so the democons control any Democratic president, the neocons control any Republican president, although with the neocons there's a big crossover because they had a big influence in the Obama administrations as well. But the key to understand how it works is to take another step back in the shadows, and at that point the democons and the neocons answer to the same force. And no matter who's in power, whatever party it has, whatever reputation or image that party has, the same people are always in power. And so, for instance, give an example here. You had Bush, and then along came Obama, who was promoted as completely different to Bush. But the same things happened. The same list of countries in the Middle East were picked off. Bush and Blair picked off Iraq, and then Obama and Cameron picked off Libya and started the monumental tragedy and catastrophe in Syria. These were countries listed in September 2000 that were targeted by this neocon group, which means those that control the neocons. So you had this Democrat progressive Obama that was promoted as being so different to Bush, but nothing changed basically, because the same force that controlled Bush in the shadows or from the shadows was controlling Obama. Then along comes Trump, and who could be promoted as more different to Obama than Trump? And Trump was going to put America first. He was going to make America great again, and he was going to drain the swamp when he's been swimming in it his entire life. So I said in a video recently, if he drained the swamp, where is he going to do his front crawl? And so he was the man that was going to come in, and he was going to stop these this interference in other people's countries through the American military. And he was going to do loads of things which gave him a certain support, and he gets into power. But what has happened since he came to power is the same things have unfolded. When he was elected, and announced he was won, I put a meme on the internet and on my website which said the key word of the Trump administration, Iran. And you can throw Lebanon in there as well, because that was on the list. So you had this list of countries they wanted to regime change in September 2000. And one was Iraq. Well, they picked that off with Blair and Bush. Then they went to Libya and Syria. So who's next on the list? Iran, Lebanon. And so, North Korea, that was on the list as well. So we've gone through these presidents who are all promoted as completely different, with different personalities and what have you. And yet this list of countries goes on being ticked off, no matter who it is, and the direction of the world continues as it has through different administrations. Why? Because they are here today and gone tomorrow, and if they don't do what they're told and operate within the parameters of this hidden hand, well, unpleasant things happen to them. Whether it's scandals that emerge that would have been suppressed otherwise, or in terms of people like Kennedy, they're no longer with us, shall we say? So the idea that, I'll give you an example. All over America are what are known as DUMBs. Now, people might think I'm talking about Washington, and I could be, but DUMBs actually means deep underground military bases. This is where massive stuff goes on, the public never see. Well, presidents of the United States that's supposed to be running the country have no idea what's going on in these deep underground military bases, because they do not have a security clearance high enough to be told. So who the hell is making the decisions about them? Who's always there? When you start asking and answering questions like that, that's when you start to see who's really running the world. And it's not the people that come and go. It's the people that are always there.
Okay, that kind of leads on to different another area that I want to take you in a second, but I need to digress a little bit because there's a couple of questions in the chat room regarding the nanotechnology and etc. etc. So Scott is asking, so even if we were chipped and dusted etc., how can it make us do something we choose not to? That's one of the questions. So you can answer that one.
Right. Well, it does and it doesn't. Okay. And it depends on the power of your own consciousness. Can human consciousness override the chips? Yes, but only if it's in its power. If it self-identifies with being consciousness, awareness, infinite awareness, all-powerful awareness, then it will access the power of consciousness to overcome the chips and what it is kind of urging and leading people to do, think, and do emotionally. But if you are in little me mode, if you self-identify not with being consciousness with infinite power, but with being Ethel on the checkout, or Bill driving a bus, that's who I am my labels, then you will not summon the power to overcome the chip, and the chip will dictate your life. And you see, what is the brain? The brain is a processor of information, and you give it information, the brain will process it. Once we are connected to AI, if we allow that to happen, the brain will process that information, and the body will respond, and the perceptions of the body will respond to that information, because it won't be filtered anymore by any human awareness. It will just be like a computer reacting to input. If I tap the keyboard here and mess with the mouse, I can dictate what happens on the computer screen in front of me, and the computer can't do anything about it. But if the computer has a form of consciousness, a powerful enough consciousness, it can override the input that I'm putting in, and it can put something different on the screen. But if you think you're little me, and you live your life as little me, I've got no power, and you self-identify with your little labels instead of the true magnitude of self, then the AI and the chips will dictate your perception. Therefore, they'll dictate your life. What is a life except perception lived?
Do you not think this is probably the way that they're trying to move forward? I mean, another question that's been posted in here is that, with all the nanobots that have been sprayed in the air and the drinking water, do you think that these can be used in order to kill off selected groups of people or assassinate people, or make us do things that we don't want to do or think we can't? So we've got that overall mind control, so they are taking control of our subconscious to do things that we shouldn't be doing. 100%. I mean, just look at it. Look at the things that people believe that are blatantly not true. That's mind control. What is mind control? It's getting a mind to think the way the controller wants you to think. Yeah,
I've just described the education system.
Yeah,
I've just described the mainstream media. This is
really scary stuff.
This is what mind control is. When you watch a news story on the television that's not true and believe it, that's mind control. And what is mind control? It's perception control. And what this whole technological level that we're being moved into so fast is about is taking that control of perception to a technological level, which is beyond what has happened before, which is, like I said earlier, the control of information leading to control of perception.
So you don't think this is something that's been made to be more of a convenience for us, but maybe lead to us to have different behaviour?
Well, exactly that.
Okay.
Because, you see, if you want to sell something to people, you don't tell them how bad it is, do you? You tell them how good it is. So what is Kurzweil saying? Kurzweil is not saying, as he should if he was an honest man, I'm sure he can't spell the word, he would say, look, this is what's happening, right? We're going to connect human minds to AI. So AI, which we ultimately control, is going to control the perceptions directly and be the perceptions directly of the population, and then we control everything. That's what he would say if he was honest. But what's he saying? No, we are going to do that, but it's going to make us superhuman. So the sales pitch is there to try to sell us something that we will accept, because that's good, isn't it? I mean, look at it. You've got people lining up in the dead of night to be the first to get hold of a new piece of technology that is the next stage of the technological prison absorbing human perception, consciousness and awareness. The human race is extraordinarily mind controlled. It's mind controlled by the control of information. You see, if you come out of the womb and you have this very narrow band of information and you never get anything outside of it, only that, well, that's going to form your perceptions for life. And because everyone thinks the same, because they've only had the same information band that you have, when other people that have explored beyond it come out and say, actually, no, this is happening, look, they are perceived to be crazy. And then people say, well, how come you know it and everyone else thinks something different? Well, maybe someone has thought outside of the postage stamp consensus and realized what a nonsense it is. And maybe all these other people that are confirming to each other that nonsense is real have never thought outside the box or ever researched outside the box. So yes, of course they all think the same. You know, if you put people in a room and you only give them access to the same information, you come back a little while later and the perceptions of the people in the room will be the same, unless there's people in there that are conscious that can see beyond the information and process it in a different way. If they don't, everyone in that room will think the same.
I'm trying to get this into my head and trying to understand. I understand most of it, in fact, majority of it. But if they achieve their goal and they have mind control of the masses of every person on this planet, what then? What's the purpose of that? What is then? What's their aim? What's it for? What's it to do? What are they going to do next?
Well, to understand that, we have to think like they do. The very point of what they're doing is control. That is the point. You see, people say, "Oh, it's money. Look at all the money they're making. Oh, they control the money." Well, what? Yes, they have vast amounts of money because they've hijacked the whole money system. But what is money beyond? Oh, I've got lots of it. It's control. Control of money means control of choice, and if you control choice, you control someone's life. Freedom is having choice. You take freedom away by taking away choice, and this is what the political correct tyranny is doing. It's taking away the choice that people have, even to express an opinion, or to ask a question, or to make a point. So everything is about control, because they want to control everything as a matter of a goal in itself. You talk about psychopathic control freaks. Well, this hidden network invented the term and invented the state of being.
Okay. Right. I'm going to ask a really stupid question. I know it's a stupid question.
Well, it's probably a good one then.
But
all the stupid questions are the best.
Well, there are people out there that are causing mass murder and a hell of a lot of trouble across the globe in the names of, under different banners, things like ISIS and stuff like that. Is it in my mind then I'm going, okay, maybe these people are actually onto something and they're fighting against that? Is that what they're trying to do, or are they trying to? Is that something that's in place to deviate us away from something else that's going on? So it may sound a really stupid question. So why are we having that over there with the ISIS and that battle, and then we've got Trump, the Odyssey of Trump, and then obviously Russia with Putin and all this, North from Korea. Is it all going to implode, or is it the main objective is to kill us all off?
Well, where it's leading is control of everything, and any country that is operating in any way independently, none of them operate independently, but more independently, and is not yet fully absorbed. Well, they're being targeted. The country being targeted at the moment is Russia, for instance. And eventually they'll target China as well. The idea is control. I mean, the wars in the Middle East are just wars of acquisition, and but this is the point as well. I mean, there's so many levels of this, but the currency of control, or one of the major currencies of control, is chaos and fear.
Yeah.
You sit in a room with people in a harmonious situation where people are pleasant to each other and having open debate, and everyone's respecting each other's right to an opinion. That is a very, very much more difficult situation to manipulate and direct in the direction you want to go, than if everyone is having a row with each other. Because what you're then doing, first of all, there's chaos, and when there's chaos, people are in states of fear and confusion, and that's never a good space for clear thought and critical thinking. But they're also divided and ruled. And if you look at what is happening now, not least through the political correctness nonsense, is that the divide and rule elements, the elements that are played off against each other, if you like, are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. There are more and more fault lines being created to play off against other fault lines. So, for instance, at one point we had men and women, and there was a source of potential conflict between the two. You had different races and cultures. There was a source of conflict between the two. But now we're going down to the minutiae of detail, the minutiae of someone's perceived sexuality or sexual mixture. That we've got minority groups getting smaller and smaller, and each minority group, as it gets smaller, becomes the one that seems to have most influence and power and focus and support. And therefore you've got minority groups now who were once the oppressed and perceived to be the oppressed, who are now perceived to be the oppressor against smaller minority groups that have been created. And so you've got this mass of divide and rule and chaos, whereby people are so focused on the minutiae of detail and labels, that they're getting further and further away from looking at each other in the way that is above racism and is above race and is above all these labels, and that is, we're all consciousness. We are all expressions of the same consciousness having different experiences. We are different points of attention in the same infinite flow of awareness. And if you want to pull people out of that mode, which is where we come together, which is where we realize we're all expressions of each other, which is above all these fault lines, well, that's a nightmare if you want to divide and rule and control people. You have to pull them in to perceptions of self and other people through the labels. So I am black, I am white. No, I am consciousness having an experience in a body that we call white. Your consciousness, ultimately the same one, having an experience through a body that we call black. And it's the same with transgender and feminists. I mean, look how far we've got, Nick. We're now having the feminists in conflict with transgender. This is this increasing fault lines. And the way that society is kept in a state of chaos and confusion is by inverting everything. So what should be up is down. What should be down is up. And there's a wonderful example of that going on now with this progressive mentality. They call progressives in America liberals, which is the most ludicrous idea, because this progressive mentality that has hijacked the political left drives political correctness, it drives these fault lines, it's driving the destruction of freedom of speech, while calling itself liberal. So it's this mentality that should be defending freedom of speech, is what being liberal is, that is setting out to destroy it. And this mentality, which has come out ultimately from this 1% that's running this, has taken over the universities and colleges. It's taken over so much of social media. It's dictating what opinions people can have and can't have. It's creating infinite possibilities for divided and ruling, and it's got maybe one of the great inversions is the fact that we have groups like this Antifa, this anti-fascist organization that it calls itself, that claims to be anti-1%, that is actually doing the bidding of the 1%, because the 1% wants an end to freedom of speech. It doesn't want people to have the ability to expose the 1% in the way it should be exposed. They want to stop freedom of speech. And what we now have, we've had an example in Britain in the last day or so, these black masked warriors that call themselves anti-fascists while acting like them, target people and destroy freedom of speech. If you're not saying what we want you to say, then we're going to break your meeting up. And then they'll say, see, we're for the people, we're against the 1%, when they're doing exactly what the 1% want. Political correctness is simply manipulating the target population to silence the target population. That's what political correctness is all about. And so you have people who claim to be anti-establishment, who are the warriors and the stormtroopers of the establishment. And you've got to take a step back in consciousness terms, beyond the labels, and look at behavior and look at outcomes, and then you can see through the mass and the maze of bewildered inversion and contradiction that is there to hide from people the simple connections that reveal the picture of what's really happening, as opposed to what people think is happening. And I would say this as a way of identifying if it's the agenda or not, and it's almost a foolproof way. Ask the question about a subject or a situation. Are you allowed to openly discuss it? Are you allowed to have an open opinion about it? Are we allowed to have an open debate about this situation or subject? And if the answer is no, and that's no on political correctness, that's no on mass immigration into certain targeted areas, it's no on transgender, it's no on so many things now. You cannot discuss this, you cannot have an alternative opinion on it. Then people need to realize that people are being silenced in terms of those opinions, because it's the agenda, and the agenda is not to be questioned and is not to be exposed. And this is why now, and it's happening with extraordinary speed, that the Google-owned YouTube is cancelling and deleting whole channels that have been running for years and years and years of videos of people who are exposing different aspects of the establishment and the system and what's really happening.
Well, it's not just those as well, it's people that are in the holistic field and proclaim that obviously certain things, there is a cure for cancer, and these people are being popped off.
Yes.
Well,
this is the point. There's an agenda, right? There's an agenda. That agenda must not be challenged and it must not be exposed. Now, you to take those simple statements, and they explain all this censorship that's going on. They explain why alternative practitioners in health areas are being targeted, as you've just said. Yep. It explains it all. This is the agenda. We're pushing it. And anything that is exposing or challenging the agenda, we are destroying and deleting. That is, in simple terms, what is happening every day. And the progressive, regressive, non-liberal, but thinks it is mentality is the driving force behind it.